Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 43 of the Tell It Like It Is podcast. Today, I have Olga Nadal. And Olga, you are doing something very impressive, and I'm so excited that you decided to come on with me today. Can you share with us a little bit of what you have going on?
Sure, yeah. I am Olga Nadal, and I am the author of the upcoming book, The Holistic Divorce, a practical 10-step process for healing, where I portray my methodology to do divorce in a holistic manner, which means we don't only take care of the logistics, also known as the legalities of divorce, we also base our approach on the emotions of divorce. So we take care of the roller coaster of ups and downs that people have to deal through to get to the finish line, which is signing a marital dissolution agreement. And I believe that this has been a huge gap in the whole divorce process, and the reason why we've had such conflict in the past. It is not because divorce is in itself a horrible process. It is because we have made it so by ignoring the very basic reality, which is it's a very emotional passage in our lives, and we need to honor that. So I am trying to spread the message that there is a different type of divorce, which is the drama-free or low conflict divorce. And this book is going to be the vehicle to reach the masses. In the meantime, I am working with one-on-one clients through my coaching. I have a practice called Divorce for Love, and that's where I help people with a tailor approach, because this is another part that we've overlooked in the process, and is that this is a very, very individualistic approach. Like you can't just go cookie cutter and say, okay, if this worked for your friend, this is going to work for you. Each marriage story and each divorce story needs to be looked at in a specific, and then design a strategy to work with.
And how did you get into this kind of work?
As most transformations happen, I had to go through my own. So I went through my own divorce, and I was married for 16 years. And for the last 3 years of that marriage, I was not fulfilled. And I was doing what most people do, which is staying in it just because it wasn't too bad. And I did have a wonderful husband that was very sweet and kind and understanding to me, but our marriage, the relationship, had fulfilled its purpose. So in my book, I talk about what I coined as a bit of a joke, but now I use it with my clients, and it's FMS, which is the fulfilled marriage syndrome. And it's how I explained to people who were like, well, why are you getting a divorce? You don't hate each other. He doesn't abuse you. And I say, yes, but our marriage has been fulfilled. We got together to bring two incredible humans into this world. We created a financial empire, and we evolved as humans. And we reached the point where our evolution wasn't meant to continue with each other as partners. We wanted to continue as friends. So in order to do that, we had to go through divorce. And when I went through the experience, it was mind-boggling how horrible the divorce process is set up, and how there is not enough information. The information that is out there is really conflictive, and it kind of leads people towards a very traumatic experience. So I wanted to do it in a manner that was respectful and amicable, and I couldn't find much of the resources that I needed. So being the entrepreneur that I am, I decided I was going to create the product to help people go through that. So I became a life coach, and then I specialized in doing the divorce transition.
Okay. So what kind of resources does someone need when they're getting a divorce?
I say that people going through divorce need inspiration, education, and mentorship. So the first thing that you need is inspiration, because you are entering a process that just by default, everybody's scared of. Everybody feels like this is just going to be a horrible passage. And I tell them, you get to choose what it's going to be to some extent. I do understand there is another half of the equation that we need to work with. But if one of you is already going into this with such a fatalistic perspective, then yes, it's probably going to be pretty horrible. So I say, get inspired, find people who have done a divorce that is amicable, that was collaborative. And now there are examples. A generation ago, there were very, very few and far apart. Nowadays, we do have access to those people, those teachers, those books. The second thing that is very essential is education, because ignorance can cost you so much. And especially when it comes to this moment in life, when you're making decisions that are going to affect the rest of your financial future and the relationship with your children, then yes, it is vital that you are fully educated on what your options are. And the last thing that I think you need is mentorship, because this is a process that needs to be very carefully curated. And just getting one bad piece of advice from someone who is either not a professional or who has had a previous bad experience can completely derail the whole process. And this is the main reason why I do this, because my mission is to avoid suffering. And I see so much suffering, both in the spouses and in the children, that could be easily avoided if people had taken those 3 steps of getting inspired, educated, and found a mentor.
I'm sure that you see some patterns. What are some of the patterns you're seeing?
Oh, that's a very good question. So one of the main patterns that I'm seeing, first of all, 70% of divorces, and this is a statistic, are initiated by women. So yeah, the main pattern that I have is that I have women come to work with me. I've had only a few men, and I'm trying to make some correlations, but I don't know if I'm just, it's a hypothesis that I'm trying out there. And it's that women do need that emotional support and they're willing to ask for it. Men also need it. They're just not told that they can ask for it. So men, they just want to go to the lawyer and sign whatever needs to be signed. The women need to make peace with the process, and they need to be handled with them, all the emotions. So that's one pattern that is really interesting, how women are way more open to be coached through the process, even though I believe that both genders could truly benefit from it. Another pattern that I'm seeing, and it's another theory that I'm proposing, is that we're not meant to stay in our first marriage. I'm not saying that people shouldn't get married. I think that marriage is a beautiful institution. And I think that for many people, it's the only institution that they will abide with to be in a long-term committed relationship. But I think that when we marry, especially the way that our previous generations and even my generation has done it, is we tend to marry young and pretty wounded. There hasn't been the emotional and inner work that we need to do to be whole humans. So we come to the marriage with a whole Hollywood paradigm of you complete me, and we expect someone else to fulfill so many roles that they really don't have any need to fulfill. We should be the ones doing it. But we go into these partnerships almost with a flawed intention right from the beginning, right from the get-go. And as you evolve and life happens and things happen and children happen and mortgages happen, then there is a damage that happens to the relationship. And I think that many people find themselves at a point where the damage is so profound that no matter what they try, they just need to end the marriage and give themselves the grace to start over again. So that's another pattern that I'm seeing, that I think that first marriages are, and I don't want to diminish the importance of them, but I believe that the starter marriage is where you learn how to be in relationship, where your wounds are. Hopefully you learn how to communicate, how to negotiate. And I say, if you miss that opportunity, you can still achieve all that during the divorce, because that's all I teach my clients. Most of the emotional part of the divorce is teaching emotional intelligence and resilience. So then when you go into your next partnership, in whichever form you want, you can remarry, you can just date, you can be on a committed relationship without the legal bind, then you have a better chance at being in relationship with that person, not in relationship with that person plus your demons from your past. So yeah, that's another pattern that I'm seeing. And then the last pattern that I would really like to mention to everyone considering divorce is this fear that the children are going to be traumatized is so unfounded. And I'm seriously, in every podcast interview, I ask people to send me the research, the actual data that proves that children of divorce are traumatized because of divorce. And the reason why I say this is because I am a firm believer that divorce does not traumatize anyone, it's conflict. And children are very, very affected by the conflict happening amongst their parents. So what we tend to forget is that there is huge amount of animosity and abuse happening in marriage households that refuse to divorce. And to me, those children of no divorce are the ones who are suffering the most and the ones that are going to be traumatized. And not just by their childhood experience, but they're going to carry all that to their adult life, where they were going to find relationships that will probably replicate the pattern of abuse and disconnect that their parents sort of model for them. So to me, one of the things that I want to tell everybody is every single client that I work with, we touch base post-divorce throughout the whole process, and they all report to me how much happier their children are and how they're flourishing, how they understood what was going on, the resilience that children have, we totally underestimate. So that's one thing, that it's a pattern. Your children will be okay as long as you handle the process properly. And that to me is try and manage the conflict so it's kept as a very low conflict, trauma-free divorce.
How long do you typically work with your clients?
I offer them 8 to 12 week packages. So I like to work consecutive weeks because that's how we can work on the transformation. But I always let them know no divorce will happen in 8 to 12 weeks. What we're doing is preparing the ground. We're starting to get there. We are getting you mentally prepared. Then we start having the conversations with your partner, with your children. We start putting the team together, which is the divorce team, which I believe should consist of a divorce coach, a family lawyer, a financial advisor that specializes in divorce, a mediator if needed, and a therapist if needed. So we work on all those stages. And then by the time we're finished working, many of my clients continue to work with me because then we just go more into the life coaching and mindset strategies. But most of them are in a really good footing to really reach agreements and sit down and negotiate. So yeah, 8 to 12 weeks is to me the absolute basic standard to get you ready. I've seen women that are so evolutionary evolved that it's incredible. Like they really work through their fears and their emotions, and then we can sit down and talk about a negotiation. And within 8 weeks, they've sat down and they've come up with a whole marital agreement to discuss with their partners. And then yes, then you just have to do the legal part, which is once you submit the paperwork, then it's going to take 6 months before anything happens. But before everything can be finalized. But at least they got everything working, which is the biggest block for most people with divorce, is they're stuck.
Did you say 6 months?
From the moment that you file the papers until the moment it can be signed by a judge, there is a waiting period. And in most states, that's 6 months. So you won't go and say to the judge, this is what I want to do, and it will be signed right away.
Why is that?
Good question. I have a feeling that it is, first of all, because the court system is incredibly slow. So they can't, it's not like a corporation that you just show up and deliver right away. And also some states have a separation period where they force, the couple has to be separated before they can file for divorce. And I guess that what they're trying to do is make sure that people are 100% sure. They don't want people going up to the judge and then 2 weeks later saying, oh my gosh, forget all about this, we're not doing this. So they need that sort of lag between the moment when you make the decision and the moment when you sign the papers.
How many stay-at-home moms do you work with? Or what's the ratio of stay-at-home mom to working moms?
I have a lot of stay-at-home moms that want to work with me, but they can't because of their financial situation. They will have to ask their husband for permission to pay a divorce coach. And most of them are too terrified to even have that conversation. So I work mostly with women who work themselves or have access to income separately from their husbands. To me, that's a bit of a tragedy, to be honest, because I feel that so many of these stay-at-home moms are true heroes that did the right thing. They stayed at home, they look after their children, and that being a mother of two, that's incredible work. And now they want a way out and they can't because they depend on their husband to make all the decisions. So I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that they can't divorce. They can totally divorce. And I want every woman to know that they will be supported. The system provides for that. But to actually pay the money to a divorce coach, that's kind of a luxury that a lot of them do not have access to. So that's why I created the book. The book to me is like, look, for $15, you can get at least the basic information, education, and inspiration that I was talking about. You don't get the mentorship, but that's another reason why I created my Facebook group, which is a membership where you only pay $40 a month. And then I go in there and I do group coaching. I answer their questions. So I'm always trying to find ways for people to get access to me. I also created an online course, which again, it's a much smaller price tag than working one-on-one. So I'm trying to get people where they are and be able for them to have access to at least some of the information, because I think that is the most crucial factor in determining how your divorce will go.
Do you encounter any like Christian issues with people trying to get a divorce and the Bible and all of this thing?
I have, to be honest, I haven't actually worked with anyone. I have had a lot of people come and wanted to work with me, and then their faith kind of said, no, you can't do this. So I'm not sure whether they ended up going through with the process or not. That one, to me, it's a pretty peculiar one, because I to be honest, I wouldn't know how to handle such a larger structure of their faith system. I can work with subconscious beliefs. That to me is something that we can all reprogram. But when it comes to religious beliefs and you are part of them in the current moment, then I am not sure that I can help you reprogram them, because I don't think that you want to reprogram them. So that's I would love to work with someone who is in the Christian environment and wants to go through with this, but like I said, I haven't had the chance.
So typically they change their mind, they don't go ahead with it. The people, your clients, are more secular, you're saying?
Yes, I have most of my clients, that's another interesting pattern. They talk to me. So I offer discovery calls where we just get on the phone and we chat, and you tell me where you are. I tell you what I can do for you. And then if it's a good fit, we move forward. And many of my clients, the ones that became paying clients, we had the discovery call, and they were what I call at boiling point. So they were at a point in the relationship where they were like, that's it, we're done. Something had happened, or they really couldn't stand it anymore. It tends to happen around the holidays. I know that coming up towards Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year, that's when I start getting all the calls. We talk about it. They seem so determined. And then when I follow up with them, they got cold feet, because they realize that it's scary, and it is very scary, and they don't know. I truly believe that they just don't have the confidence that they can do it. And I agree, maybe at the time you don't have the confidence, but that's why you need a mentor that is going to teach you the skills to become confident. It's like if you started taking piano classes and somebody asks you to play for a recital in front of people, and you'll be like, oh, hell no. But if you keep training with them, after a while, you'll be like, yes, give me the chance to show up. So I think that fear is the one thing that stops most people from taking the first step. And that's precisely why they need a mentor or a coach by their side, because those are the ones that are going to help them overcome the fear obstacle.
So you're in Hawaii right now?
Yes.
How long have you been in Hawaii?
18 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. What initially brought you there?
My previous husband, my ex-husband, he came here and he wanted to open a restaurant, and I was living in Spain. We met in England when I was doing my degree. And then I went back to Spain. He came to Hawaii to visit his brother, and then he wanted to move here. So he came and said, you want to come? And I came, checked it out, and how can you say no to Hawaii? So I ended up living here for 18 years now.
Okay, so you're American, you're gonna stay here?
I'm still Spanish citizen, but I do plan to stay here. My current situation is It's pretty peculiar. I don't like saying it's complicated because it's very simple, but it's peculiar in the sense that my husband, my current husband, lives in Arizona. He lives in the mainland. So we do a lot of traveling back and forth. I'm choosing to stay on the island for now because my kids are here. And as long as my ex is here, then I will remain on the island. But yeah, so I do a lot of traveling to the mainland and back here.
So what did you study in school?
You're gonna laugh. I studied environmental science, and then I did a master's degree in sustainable tourism.
Oh, wow. So you said you're an entrepreneur. Have you done any other ventures?
Yeah, when I came to the United States, we opened our restaurant here in Hawaii, and we kept that restaurant for 11 years. And then we opened 2 more locations in New York, in the Hamptons. And we kept those ones as well for another 6 years. And then we decided that the restaurant business and children just was too much. So we slowly started selling them. And then I went into the vacation rental business. So I have a bed and breakfast here in Hawaii. And I also design clothes. I create them and manufacture them in Bali. And I also have now the online business for divorce coaching.
Right. So, I mean, so much of, 2 people getting together, I know is not an easy process, right? And it takes a lot of time and effort, like a garden. You have to water it, nurture it, and give it constant attention, right? When you're trying to make money and you have kids, you're very busy, and you just don't have time, and the communication gets put on the back burner, and this is what happens, right? You begin to drift apart and these kinds of things.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. And I even see it now, which is so bizarre to see both worlds, the world of, not having children and doing whatever we want when my husband and I are together and we don't have the children. And then he has 2 daughters. I have 2 kids. So when all of us are together and it's the 6 of us, I go back to that whole marriage structure and how tiring it is to, like you said, work, take care of the kids, take care of our relationship, how communication starts sliding. And, it takes work. And that's what I think that we also don't realize in our first marriages, that we think, oh, if we love each other, that will suffice. And it's like, no, love is what binds you together for a minute. And after that, you gotta nourish. I don't really like saying the word work, because I think that that's what puts people off. It makes us think like, really, I gotta work at this too. But it's nourish it. It's like you describe it, it's a plant, it's an animal, it's an entity. I say that relationships are entities separate from the individuals that created them. And we do need to pay attention to them. And yet it does get incredibly hard when life gets in the way. And that's what I also see, when you are young and you're working really hard because you have to climb the corporate ladder and you have to buy the home and you have to get the white picket fence and then you have the children, and it is a lot of moving pieces. So it's almost like you're fighting an uphill battle. And that's why a lot of people, if they don't truly focus on the relationship, then it could end. And I don't have a problem with relationships ending. I think that life is cyclical, things start, things end. But I think that we need to be very conscious as to how it's going to end. That's the only requirement. It's like, don't leave it to hope. Hope is not a good strategy when it comes to divorce. And don't let it get to the point where you really can't stand each other, which is another pattern, like we were talking about before, that I see. And it's people just trying to save the marriage at all costs. At all costs. Like they try everything and they try it again and they try it again. And eventually they're just so jaded and they're actually really angry because they've invested more time, energy, and money that they needed in saving this. So they get to the divorce arrangement and they are in really horrible terms. And the 2 things that you need for conscious communication are trust and respect. And those 2 things have gone out the window while they were trying to save the marriage. So I often say, once you know it, and everybody knows when that time arrives, once you know it, then find help. just go and find help and start putting the wheels in motion.
So the practice is Divorce for Love. What is the mindset behind that title?
Yeah, the reason why I said Divorce for Love is because I said that you marry for love. You marry because you love the other person. And when you get to divorce, I'm hoping that you're divorcing because you love yourself and you love your children. You love them enough to say, look, this was a great marriage or a horrible marriage. It really doesn't matter. This was an arrangement that we had. It doesn't work anymore. I love myself enough to stand up and say, hey, let's end this. So to me, it's very much about self-love, which I think that it also gets lost when we are talking about marriage, especially for women. They lose a lot of their identity when they become the wife of, and very often lose their last name. They become the mom of, and they often lose their career and they lose their financial independence. So they lose themselves in the process. And by the time they get to the divorce, it's a whole work that we have to do to find out who they are again. And I love that part of the process. But I remember when I was going through mine and when my clients go through theirs, it's very disorienting to be like, I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't know what I want. I don't know how I should decorate a house if it's not for my children or for my husband. But at the same time, I think that in that disconnection, there is so much potential for rewriting your story, whichever way you want it to be. So that's, to me, the biggest part. Is like, you get to transform. You get to go through this initiation and come out at the other end and say, this is who I want to be. Whereas up until this point, there were all these roles that were assigned to you and there was no wiggle room. You just had to be like, for me, for example, one of those roles that I found really oppressive was being a mother. And I know that this may sound really shocking, but from my background, I didn't have a good model for being a mother. So when I became a mother, everything that was happening was just like, I don't know how to handle any of this. And for me, with the divorce, we went into 50-50 custody. So having that time where I didn't have my children, as painful as it was at first, I learned to deal with that sorrow and that grief. But then I learned to focus on, okay, what does Olga Nadal want? What can I do with me? What is my creativity? And then being creative again and being able to create all these businesses, just writing the book was something that I didn't expect I was going to be doing at the tender age of 45. But to me, it's like this rebirth that I get to do. And like I said, my life was very successful in terms of, I had accomplished everything that I could want to accomplish, but I didn't realize that there were all these other things. Like, I wanted to lead women into their freedom, into their next great chapter. And I couldn't have done that within the structure of our marriage.
What role does infidelity play in the divorces that you see?
Infidelity, oof, that's one for a whole other podcast. But anybody dealing with infidelity, first resource that I want to share is Esther Perel. She's an author, a therapist, a counselor for couples, and she's incredible. She has amazing books. One of them is called Mating in Captivity, and she has an incredible TED Talk where she talks all about infidelity. And she's worked with hundreds of couples going through infidelity. What I understand and what I've seen with my clients is very often infidelity is used as the get me out of jail card. So what we were saying was people don't really want to leave a marriage unless it's really, really bad or something horrible has happened. So very few people will do this consciously, but subconsciously, very often, one of them will have an affair just to give themselves or the other partner the excuse to say, okay, this is it. We have to end this marriage. Look what happened. Surprisingly enough, for many couples, this is just, instead of their getting out of jail card, it's actually the I'm going to stay in jail and make your life miserable card. And that's when things just take a horrible turn, because then you have one person that plays the victim card to the max. And please, I'm not diminishing. There is so much hurt, so much betrayal, so much trust that is broken. So I understand the feelings are really they need to be processed, but very often people will not process them. They just use them as a weapon to use against their partner. So once again, it's that kind of marriage that really, it has fulfilled its purpose, it's turning into a destructive force, and it's just gonna sink the people in the marriage and the children. The whole family doesn't stand a chance unless they really do the work to overcome that infidelity. For that, I would not be the person to help you. I'm sure that there are professionals out there, but yeah, I see very often that infidelity is an exit strategy. It's not the most brave option to take, but is one that people sometimes take.
So how does the finances go in most cases?
The one thing that everybody needs to know is that everything is negotiable, and that if you are able to process your emotions, and if you are able to sit at the table without anger, without resentment, without the paradigm that I try to work with my clients to eradicate before they sit down to negotiate, which is divorce is not a place where you settle your emotional wounds with financial assets. So if you process all those emotions and then you sit down to negotiate, you can come up with whatever arrangement you want. I mean, it has to be reasonable because the judge has to sign it, but it doesn't have to be what the law says. What the law says is the absolute minimum that can happen, or what they consider is fair. But in the divorce world, fair is a very funny word because it means so many things to so many people. So what is important is that we go with the approach that I try to expose in my book and with my clients, and it's the winning mindset. And we're going to try to have a triple win, a win for my client, a win for their spouse, and a win for their children. And for that, you can't tell one approach is better than the other. You have to go one-on-one cases. So for some people, 50-50 is the best financial arrangement. For other people, is one gets more, the other one gets less. When it comes to child support, spousal alimony, all those things, I think that they really need to be tailored. They really need to go one by one. But an important factor that a lot of people are not aware of is that you do have rights. You will, many women come to me saying, oh my gosh, he's saying he's going to take the kids. He's not going to give me any money, then I'm going to be ruined. And I said, well, a judge has to say yes to that. So that's not going to happen. There is justice, even though there is not the kind of justice that people imagine that they've seen in the movies. Okay. And that's another thing that people need to know. You do not have to go to court. Court is what happens in the movies. It's for the really high conflict cases. Most cases can be settled either by yourself, through mediation, or with lawyers. Once you agree on things, you don't have to show up and present a case and all that. That's just for Hollywood fanfare. So yeah, the finances, I just want people to be reassured. Very, very few people will get royally, I don't want to say that, but they will have a very hard time following their divorce. Again, if they do it correctly, if they go there with an agenda for revenge, for, trying to ruin the other person, then that's when God knows what's going to happen.
So you're not an advocate for divorce. You're just assisting people who are already made up their mind.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, I introduce myself as I am not pro-divorce. I am not pro-marriage. I'm just pro-happy people. That's all I want. I want people who are happy, who are complete, who are in touch with their emotions, who know how to communicate properly, who are emotionally intelligent. And if your marriage is not allowing you to access that, then yes, you may get to the conclusion that you need to end that, and I'm here to help you. The same that we help people going through other transformations. This is the part that I was pretty taken aback when I told my mentor when I was learning to be a life coach that I wanted to specialize in divorce, and he said, oh my gosh, no, that's going to be one of the most difficult areas to coach, and you want to coach people on something that is easy to achieve and just lose weight or make more money or change careers. And I said, well, this is the area that people need the most help. Like, I get clients that are suicidal, and I get people who are on antidepressants or on the verge of alcoholism. Like, the pain and the suffering is so real. And what society does is we turn our backs to them, and their only help is a family lawyer, which sometimes they can be great. And I do have a lot of respect for those amazing collaborative and family lawyers that really do the process properly, but sometimes they're not. And then the system eats them up. And that to me is just so sad. And I want to avoid that suffering.
So much of where we are now as a culture, there's a lot of moving pieces. And a lot of people are in pain, walking around in pain, not in touch with their childhood, not in touch with their trauma, not self-aware, these kinds of things. They go into the marriage and it's not the other person's fault, right? The other person is trying to connect with them, trying to love them, and these things are happening. You have a very difficult job.
Yes. But you were just describing how it's an interesting setup, because you have these two elements. And I sometimes say, some relationships are like two chemicals put together and then they explode, but separately they're incredible humans. They just happen to trigger each other's wounds. And I think that relationships are the most incredible school for learning about your triggers, your wounds, and evolve, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But you got to be aware of what you're getting into. And we don't. We go into the marriage thinking it's just going to be this bed of roses and, happiness and fulfillment and joy, even motherhood, the way that is described. And then you find all these women having postpartum depression because it's like, yeah, the reality that you guys put on the commercials for babies, that's not happening. So I wish that more people talk openly about marriage and, yes, how it is a commitment and how you have to be very in touch with your emotions, how you need to do constant reckoning of what you're bringing into the relationship. And yet we hardly ever, first, are taught how to do that, and second, are willing to do that. So yeah, when they come to me, I mean, some people say I have a hard job. I love it because I just see the transformation. I see people who are slaves to a system or to a bond that really is just killing them softly. And I get to walk them. I get to take their hand and say, I know this is really scary. I was on the same tunnel and it's really dark. Everywhere you look, it's just dark and scary. But look, there is light at the end and I'm going to walk you there. And for me, taking them from that place of desperation to this place of hope and happiness is like, okay, my work is done. And knowing that children didn't have to suffer the way that I had to through my parents' divorce, I'll take any hard part of the job any minute.
I was having a conversation recently, and I was saying that a lot of the things that single people break up for in a marriage, you go through that and more, right? And I think that we do glorify being married in a way that's like, if you're dating and this happens, like, oh no, it's over. But in a marriage, you have to really do that work, that difficult talk, all of these things. And it's really not that simple at all.
Yeah, the way that our society has established relationships, marriage seems to be the most potent of the bindings that we have found. But I do believe that moving forward, and this is another statistic that is coming up, is that the new generations don't even want to get married because they don't want to be in that, what they feel is sort of a claustrophobic system where they can't get out of. Which to me is part of that misconception that divorce has to be so horrible. If we make divorce an easier experience, I think that people will still be able to commit to the marriage. And then if the relationship has to end, then it won't be a decision that they'll have to even, postpone forever. It'll be like, okay, we know what's coming, let's do it. But I do think that people have created this only because of the marriage, we will have to stay together. In my opinion, that's flawed. In my opinion, the children are what really bind you together. And I have worked with people who got married and then 3 years later decided to part ways, no children, few assets. Trust me, that's an easy process. There is nothing. And then they go their merry ways. They never talk to each other, or they go and have margaritas, whatever they choose to do. They get to choose. But when it comes to children, for at least 18 years, you're very, very connected to your partner in whatever form, married, divorced. And after that, it's up to the parents and the relationship, how it has evolved. But that to me is the real tie, the children.
Most of your clients are online or in person?
Online. Yeah, I've only had 2 people in person here. And since 2020, it's been like everything online.
I feel like you would do very well in California.
I do have a lot of clients from California. I have clients from affluent regions because, like I said, it's usually where the woman also works. So it comes from people with high incomes. That's another area that I focus on, and it's women who are actually making more money than the men. So they come to me and they really need the advice to make sure that their financial security is not going to be jeopardized because their partner is going to want to take more than what they feel is fair. So and there is now an incredible emergence of women making 6 and 7 figures. They have businesses that are so powerful. So I think that, again, when they're getting to that point where they're like, this relationship is not quite working for me, I'm totally financially independent, I'm finding the inspiration to know that I can be okay, my children can be okay, I can have a chance to find someone that it's more compatible with me now, then why am I staying here? And then they come to me and then I just guide them through the process.
I think a lot of our issues come down to finances, and then the other thing that keeps coming up was the infidelity. Those are the 2 big things that I'm sure.
And the children, people are very scared of what's going to happen to the children. So yeah, finances. I did a post the other day where I said, give me another reason, which is not finances, that the kids. And also another one is fear of being alone, which is another misconception that I just want to eradicate. Like, I understand in my mom's generation, 50 years ago, when you divorce, if you were that brave, then yeah, where were you going to meet anyone else? And, you were the older woman, in their 40s, it was like, forget about it. Nowadays, it's like, come on, guys, have you seen the world of social media and dating? And it's fun. Like, I remember starting dating again in my 40s. And yeah, at first it's a little bit intimidating. And then it's like, where has this been all my life? So it's another misconception that people think I'm going to be alone. To me, it's like, most people are very alone within their marriage and they don't have a chance of changing it. They can't, unless they have an affair. And then that can bring in a whole Pandora box of trauma. So yeah, if you decide to go this route, the chances of you being alone are entirely up to you. Is if you want to be alone, you will. But if you don't, trust me, there's a whole world out there.
Thank you, Olga. Keep coaching. I think that a lot of people need a lot of things. I think people struggle to think on their own and really use that emotional intelligence within, trusting themselves. And they need someone to kind of say, that's okay that you feel that. Yes, that is right. And yeah, and to let them know there's a lot of people on that path. I think that's an important work.
Yeah, thank you. And I say it on my book, I have an example where I say that most of my clients come to me and they are emotionally drunk, which I totally understand. This is such an event in their lives and the way that it's being portrayed by society and our culture. So what I do is I stay with them and I help them sober up. And then when they're sober, we make all the decisions. Whereas the system right now is set up that they're emotionally drunk and they're like, here are the keys, drive yourself home. And that to me is really, really a precarious situation to be in. So I'm with them, I make sure that they're sober, and then we start talking about the decisions. So yeah, I'm gonna keep on coaching. I'm even training now other people to become coaches. I created the Holistic Divorce Institute. So I'm gonna coach people because the statistics keep going up And there's going to be more divorces. And again, I don't have a problem with that statistic. I just want to make sure that people know how to divorce in a trauma-free, low conflict manner.
I feel like at this point you could do some marital coaching as well.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm working on my own marriage. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be able to.
No, I definitely see that as a direction. Like you see the red flags along the way and you're like, all right, before you get to red flag number 1, you need a date night every week. You need this every week. Like the steps are there. The books have said it. Like everything we talked about, it's like, it's the textbook stuff. If you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week for 5 years straight, don't be surprised if your marriage fails.
Right.
So, at that point, it's no one's fault, career is what it is, but you have to nurture it. That's the bottom line. I'm big in community, and we need community to help support the marriage. We need support in everything that we do. So if you're married or getting married, getting divorced, you need support.
Yeah. Well, maybe my next book will be The Holistic Marriage, and it'll be maybe I'll do a trilogy. I don't know what the other one will be, The Holistic Dating or something.
Exactly. No, that's it. The 3 steps.
Well, thank you, Alexi. I just got my whole business model plan out.
Yeah, and I like that it's backwards because you encountered the problem. You're meeting the problems where they are.
And isn't that how Star Wars started? You go back. Okay, I got it.
You have a beautiful home. Thank you for taking the time. Do you want to leave us with anything? How can we find you?
Just my website, olganadal.com, and all the information is there. If they want to get a hold of the book, if they want to see what I'm doing on my Instagram is at Divorce for Love. And yeah, I have all sorts of resources. Please, the one thing that I want everybody to know is you do not have to do this alone. Go and find the mentor, the book, the course, whatever you need, the workshop. And I'm there to provide you, guide you in the right direction. You don't have to work with me, but I'll tell you who can help you. So thank you so much, Alexi. This was awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.